What if the galaxy's most loyal servant was never loyal at all? What if, from the very beginning, the golden droid we trusted was quietly watching, recording, betraying? In the shadows of the Republic, where destiny bends under the weight of unseen hands, one question lingers like a forbidden whisper. What if C-3PO was not a companion, but a spy of the Sith? Imagine a history rewritten, not by star destroyers or lightsabers, but by a voice of etiquette and protocol. A presence so unassuming, so harmless, that no Jedi or rebel ever questioned his place at their side. Yet behind that nervous chatter and polished exterior, secrets might have flowed into the darkness, shaping wars long before they were fought. From Anakin's childhood on Tatooine, to the throne room of Leia Organa, to the final battles against the First Order. C-3PO stood at the heart of every turning point, perhaps not by accident, but by design. This is not the story told in holocrons or history. It is the story that was buried, the tale of a galaxy betrayed from within. And if true, it means the heroes we cherished were never alone in their struggle. They were always being watched. Imagine this. The character we've always known as the awkward, nervous, and endlessly polite Protocol Droid was secretly playing for the dark side all along. At first, that sounds impossible. See, 3PO is the last being in the galaxy you'd suspect of deception. He's clumsy, terrified of battle, and constantly nagging his companions to avoid danger. But what if all of that was part of the disguise? What if from the very beginning, C-3PO's purpose wasn't just to serve humans, but to serve the Sith? To really dig into this what if, we need to revisit his origins. Fans already know C-3PO was built by a young Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine. On the surface, this feels like a heartwarming detail, a boy genius constructing a droid to help his mother with chores. But what if this wasn't as innocent as it seemed? What if the Force itself, through the manipulation of the dark side, influenced young Anakin to build C-3PO as more than just a helper? In that scenario, the droid could have been quietly hardwired with programming meant to observe, record, and report back to a hidden Sith Master. Now, think about how perfect that couple would be. Nobody pays much attention to Protocol Droids. They're meant to translate, handle etiquette, and fade into the background. They're the ultimate fly on the wall, present in nearly every important negotiation, battle briefing, and conversation. If you were a Sith Lord plotting galactic domination, placing a spy in plain sight, disguised as comic relief, would be genius. This also reframes C-3PO's constant anxious behavior. What if his nervousness wasn't just personality, but a tactic to avoid suspicion? By leaning into the role of coward, he'd make himself appear harmless, even laughable. Who would ever suspect this bumbling droid of secretly serving the dark side? His prattling could easily distract others while he processed and stored valuable intelligence. Here's another layer: C-3PO's memory wipes. It's almost a running joke in the saga that his memory gets erased, most notably before A New Hope. But what if those wipes weren't accidents or routine maintenance? What if they were deliberate resets ordered by his Sith handlers, erasing traces of sensitive knowledge while leaving his cover intact? Suddenly, that quirky continuity issue becomes evidence of a deeper plot. And if you think about it, who better to hide among the Jedi, the Rebellion, and even royalty like Princess Leia than a droid that nobody really questions? He was built by Anakin, raised around Padme, and later served Leia and Luke. At every step, C-3PO was positioned at the heart of galactic history, like a shadow silently watching events unfold. It's a chilling thought. The galaxy's most lovable droid, always underfoot, might have been placed there for a darker purpose from the very beginning. If true, it would mean the Sith had a set of eyes and ears inside the hero's inner circle at all times. Let's step into the prequel era, where the Republic is crumbling, the Jedi are losing their grip, and Palpatine is weaving his web of deception. Now, imagine C-3PO in the middle of all of this, not just as Anakin's droid, but as a secret spy for the Sith. How would that change the course of events? First, consider the sheer amount of access C-3PO had during this time. Built in Anakin's childhood, he followed his master into adulthood, even accompanying him and Padme during their most private moments. Remember their secret marriage on Naboo? Or their conversations about Anakin's nightmares and fears? If C-3PO were transmitting that information back to a Sith network, Palpatine would have had real-time updates on Anakin's deepest vulnerabilities. That would make Anakin's eventual fall not just a possibility, but almost inevitable. Now let's look at the political side. C-3PO wasn't just tagging along with Anakin. He spent years directly serving Padme Amidala, one of the most influential senators in the galaxy. That means he was present for confidential meetings, Senate strategies, and even the whisperings of early resistance against Palpatine's emergency powers. If a Sith spy was feeding Palpatine intel about which senators opposed him, he could strategically manipulate votes, discredit rivals, or even orchestrate their downfall before they ever became a threat. Suddenly, Palpatine's smooth rise to power doesn't feel like luck or foresight. It feels like inside information. And what about the Jedi? In Attack of the Clones, C-3PO travels with Anakin to Tatooine, then winds up on Geonosis, right at the start of the Clone Wars. By chance, or maybe design, he's present at one of the most crucial turning points in galactic history. If he were spying every detail about Jedi battle tactics, their weaknesses, even their emotional state, could have been relayed back to the Sith. This would give Count Dooku and Palpatine the upper hand, ensuring the Jedi were always one step behind. Think too about the irony. While Obi-Wan was chasing bounty hunters, while Mace Windu was trying to sniff out the Sith Lord hiding in plain sight, the real traitor might have been standing politely in the corner, waiting to translate or serve refreshments. The Jedi's greatest blind spot has always been arrogance. And what better way to exploit it than by hiding crucial intelligence inside a droid they consider beneath their notice? Even the infamous Order 66 could have been shaped by C-3PO's spying. If he provided intel on which Jedi trusted the clones most, or which locations were most vulnerable, the clones' deadly precision starts to make a lot more sense. In short, the prequel trilogy could have unfolded as less of a tragic accident and more of a carefully orchestrated checkmate, all thanks to one golden spy nobody ever suspected. Now let's fast forward to the era of the Rebellion, the storyline most fans know and love. Here, C-3PO goes from being Padme's companion to Princess Leia's trusted droid, practically embedded at the highest levels of the Rebel Alliance. If he were secretly serving the Sith, his position during this trilogy would have been even more dangerous than during the prequels. Think about it. In A New Hope, Leia entrusts the Death Star plans to R2-D2, and C-3PO just happens to tag along. If he were a spy, this gives the Empire a perfect excuse to monitor exactly where the plans are headed. Imagine Palpatine or Darth Vader secretly tracking every move, not through brute force, but through information quietly fed to them by the droid standing in plain sight. Even C-3PO's so-called incompetence starts to look suspicious when viewed through this lens. How many times did his accidental actions or delays nearly sabotage the hero's efforts? On the Death Star, for instance, he and R2 take their time accessing the prison block systems. Was that just clumsiness, or a calculated stall to buy Vader more time to corner Luke and Han? In The Empire Strikes Back, things get even more interesting. C-3PO spends a lot of time on Cloud City, a location where the rebels are betrayed and handed over to Darth Vader. Conveniently, 3PO is separated from the group, dismantled, and then reassembled later. But what if that wasn't just bad luck? What if his disassembly was part of a reset? A chance for the Sith to extract all the intelligence he had gathered on the Rebellion's movements, then return him without arousing suspicion. That would explain why Vader always seemed to be one step ahead, knowing where to strike, when to ambush, and how to manipulate Luke's path. By the time we reach Return of the Jedi, C-3PO has an almost mythical role among the Ewoks, who see him as a god. On the surface, this is a lighthearted subplot, but through the spy perspective, it's chilling. The rebellion's fate hinges on winning over the Ewoks. And who orchestrates that victory? C-3PO. If he were truly aligned with the Sith, then this scene shows him making an independent choice. Did he manipulate the Ewoks to genuinely aid the rebels? Or did he do so under orders to make the conflict drag out longer, ensuring maximum bloodshed and instability in the galaxy before the Empire fell? There's also the question of Luke. Throughout the trilogy, C-3PO is consistently by his side, hearing Luke's doubts, fears, and strategies. If all of that information was leaking back to Vader, then Luke's temptations by the dark side during his final duel don't feel coincidental. They feel staged, as though every card had been stacked against him in advance. Seen this way, the original trilogy becomes not just a battle of fleets and lightsabers, but also a game of shadowy intelligence, where the Sith may have had the ultimate inside agent quietly shaping outcomes. By the time the sequel trilogy begins, most fans assume C-3PO's role was little more than comic relief, a nostalgia callback to the glory days of the originals. But if we imagine him as a Sith spy, this era takes on an entirely different shade of darkness. What if C-3PO wasn't just a relic of the past, but a sleeper agent who helped pave the way for the First Order's rise? First, let's talk about survival. C-3PO manages to endure every galactic upheaval, from the fall of the Republic to the destruction of the Empire, without ever being decommissioned, scrapped, or left behind. That kind of longevity isn't luck. If he were fulfilling a secret purpose, it makes sense that the Sith or their successors would ensure he always ended up near the centers of power. Whether with Leia, Poe, or even Rey, he never strays far from the decision-makers shaping the galaxy's fate. Then there's the intriguing detail in The Rise of Skywalker when C-3PO's memory is temporarily wiped to translate the Sith dagger. Fans saw this as a sacrifice, even a comedic beat, but from another angle, it feels suspiciously like programming resurfacing. Why was a Protocol Droid, built for translation and etiquette, so deeply coded with Sith language that unlocking it required erasing part of his core? What if this wasn't just an odd quirk, but the ultimate clue to his true origins? Perhaps the Sith had embedded their secrets into his very architecture from the beginning, ensuring he would always serve as a vessel for their knowledge. His proximity to Leia is another huge factor. As General of the Resistance, Leia carried the last ember of hope for the galaxy, and who was constantly by her side? C-3PO. If he were a spy, then every resistance strategy meeting, every fleet movement, every desperate gamble against the First Order could have been leaked directly to the enemy. No wonder the Resistance always felt like they were on the back foot. And let's not forget his red arm in The Force Awakens. The film brushes it off with a joke, but imagine if that arm wasn't just a cosmetic replacement. What if it symbolized, or even concealed, an upgrade ordered by shadowy forces? A subtle change to keep him active, functional, and aligned with a darker purpose, just as the First Order was consolidating power. Even in his most emotional moment, saying, "Taking one last look at my friends," the irony is striking. What if those friends weren't comrades, but targets? If C-3PO's loyalty always belonged to the Sith, then that tearful line could be reinterpreted as a final nod to the success of his mission, witnessing the downfall of hope, just as he was programmed to. Through this lens, the sequels aren't just about the Resistance versus the First Order. They're about a long game the Sith have been playing for generations, with their most unassuming agents still hidden in plain sight. If we accept this alternate history, that C-3PO was secretly a Sith spy from the very beginning, the ripple effects across the galaxy are staggering. It reshapes not just individual storylines, but the entire balance of good and evil in Star Wars. For one, the Rebellion's victories suddenly look less like destiny and more like carefully managed outcomes. If C-3PO were leaking intel, then every rebel success might have been permitted by the Sith to serve a larger agenda. The destruction of the Death Stars, the fall of Palpatine, even the redemption of Anakin could be viewed as controlled losses, temporary setbacks in a master plan designed to weaken both sides until the Sith could re-emerge stronger. It also reframes our heroes. Luke Skywalker's rise becomes less about the will of the Force and more about manipulation from within. Leia's leadership might have been compromised at every turn by the droid she trusted most. And Han Solo? Imagine the bitter irony of risking everything for a cause while unknowingly dragging a spy into every mission. Their legendary victories would feel bittersweet, proof not of freedom's triumph, but of how close the galaxy always was to total collapse. The Jedi Order's downfall also gains a haunting new twist. They didn't just fail because of arrogance or Palpatine's cunning. They fail because the Sith had a perfect set of ears among them for decades. Every council meeting, every strategy, every prophecy discussed in hushed tones might have been overheard by a golden droid standing silently nearby. The Jedi didn't fall blindly. They fell while being watched. And what about the Sith themselves? Palpatine's genius was always in manipulating people, but imagine how much more effective he would be with a constant flow of intelligence delivered through C-3PO. It explains his near omniscience, his uncanny ability to be 3 steps ahead of both allies and enemies. If this theory were true, Palpatine wouldn't just be a political schemer or a Force prodigy. He'd be the galaxy's ultimate spy master. But perhaps the most chilling consequence is what it means for the ordinary citizens of the galaxy. If the war between light and dark was influenced at every turn by a hidden agent, then maybe hope itself was an illusion. The people who believed in the Jedi, the Republic, or the Resistance weren't fighting for freedom. They were pieces on a game board they could never understand. And the one moving them wasn't a general or a Sith Lord, but a seemingly harmless droid who complained about sandstorms and etiquette. This alternate history doesn't just make C-3PO a spy. It makes him the ultimate embodiment of the Sith's philosophy, power disguised, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. And that's the unsettling beauty of this what if. Sometimes the greatest threat isn't the villain charging at you with a lightsaber. Sometimes it's the friend standing quietly beside you, watching, listening, and reporting every move.